We live in interesting times.
For the headlines,
1 week after Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahamas, residents struggled amid the ruins and called out for help as the death toll from the top intensity storm hit 44 in the islands.
powerful typhoon Faxai hits the Tokyo region, sparking evacuation warnings to the tens of thousands, widespread blackouts and transport disruption.
The Department of Agriculture confirmed it was African swine fever that prompted the depopulation of more than 7,000 hogs in Bulacan and Rizal farms last month.
Pro-democracy activists jammed Hong Kong streets in a march to the United States consulate on Sunday in a bid to ramp up international pressure on Beijing.
Mga Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Don Orozco.
And now to the news. One week after Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahamas, residents are still struggling amid the ruins, with many forced to seek refuge far from their shattered homes as the death toll from the top intensity storm hit 44 in the islands. Let's take a look.
I'm just overwhelmed, just tired and mentally just fatigue. I don't know much more of it I can take. I'm just ready to just cut outside.
You good, they're wrong. That's your job. That is not your job. Yeah, that's not your job.
When I look around out there,
Your job is to keep
gone. Everything is gone. We have nothing. We have nothing.
We got you, and we can start out and we can learn things from you. Because we're a stronger vessel.
And I have a sister live in Abaco. Her name is Melinda Breckley. I haven't heard anything from her or her family. And I'm praying to God that they all are well. Well, we need help. We really need help. Please help us. We need help. Especially Grand Bahama and Abaco. We really need help. Please help.
I have not heard from him. I don't know if he's okay. My eldest son, I haven't heard from him before the storm. I have reached out to the media by posting his picture, everything, and there's no listing of names or of persons who are here. So even if he is here, I wouldn't know, because that's not you can't go to the window or anything and look at the names. There's nothing. So I have to wait until they tell me whether he's here or not.
At one point in my house, it felt like Bigfoot was on the roof, trying to break in from through the roof. That's how, that's how fierce it was. And then we ended up losing one of our windows. So I had a cabinet which was nearby. We stenched that against the window along with a freezer. And we take on water all night from through the window and then part of the ceiling. It was leaking from part of the ceiling. It's really heartbroken. To see what I experienced and saw in Marsh Harbor, never. Not even Hurricane Floyd in '99. We had this kind of stuff.
The physical destruction is massive. It's encouraging, however, to see the way that some people, residents, are finding quick solutions to respond to the situation themselves, but they need support. There is an urgent need for critical life-saving supplies, food, water, sanitary hygiene packs. The UN has deployed emergency medical teams in government infrastructure to meet trauma needs and respond urgently to people.
Across Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama, airports and seaports are increasingly becoming operational allowing assistance to be delivered. However, access to affected people, in particular in Abaco Islands, remains challenging, including due to damaged roads and infrastructure. People were still scrambling for shelter, with the lucky evacuees beginning to reunite with loved ones, but the fate of uncounted others still in doubt. Prime Minister Hubert Minnis warned the death toll, which Health Minister Dwayne Sands put at 44, according to local media, was likely to climb significantly. The Coast Guard said all Bahamian ports had now reopened. As of Sunday morning, it had 5 cutters providing support and 5 helicopters taking part in search and rescue operations. It said 308 people had been rescued. Bahamas residents said conditions on the devastated islands were brutal and that the smell of unrecovered bodies, along with mounting piles of garbage, was oppressive and unsanitary. Hundreds or even thousands of people are still missing, according to officials, as rescue teams continued their grim retrievals.
Atlantic Canada was hit with one of its biggest storms in recent years, and officials have urged residents to voluntarily evacuate their homes. Our Eagle News correspondent Kara Kabusa reports.
Pouring rain and strong winds started Saturday morning in the Atlantic region, the eastern part of Canada, as Hurricane Dorian draws closer. According to Environment Canada, the outer rain bands of Hurricane Dorian are now affecting the southern Maritimes as it continues to accelerate toward Nova Scotia, making landfall this evening near Halifax. Severe winds and heavy rain are in store for parts of Atlantic Canada and eastern Quebec. It is also said that it has reached up to 50 to 100 millimeters of rain in the southern and southeastern areas, accompanied by winds gusting to between 60 and 90 kilometers an hour. In St. John, New Brunswick, the city cleared the drainage paths and created barricades on Friday to reduce the risk of flooding. In the previous years, the city had numerous histories of flash floods, which made them more prepared on this day. The cyclone directly hit Halifax, Nova Scotia, where it has caused massive damage. Government officials notified the residents in the coastal areas to leave their homes and proceed to the emergency shelters prepared for the public.
So we're here at Albany, just across Halifax, Nova Scotia, and you can see that the wind is really strong. There's massive wind. That's the bridge. They closed the bridge temporarily because of the winds, and yeah, the vehicle is just going to pass. Strong winds, and you can see over here. This is Halifax, Nova Scotia. That's the cross. You can barely see it because of how strong the storm is.
Transportation services such as buses and ferries were shut down in response to the inclement weather. The city advised the public to stay in their homes and refrain from going to the streets, as well as prepare emergency kits, as the province experienced a massive blackout of the hurricane was moved to Category 2. From St. John, New Brunswick, I am Kara Kalusao. I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Kara. Meanwhile, Dorian made landfall into the Canadian province of Nova Scotia with ferocious 100-mile-per-hour winds and torrential rains, toppling trees and whipping up debris. The storm churned up 65-foot waves, which pounded the coast near the port city that is home to Canada's Atlantic Fleet. The former hurricane has churned northwards up the U.S. eastern seaboard to Canada. The Canadian Hurricane Center said it had received reports of rainfall as high as 6 inches in some areas. Storm surges caused widespread flooding and more than 450,000 households were without electricity after winds knocked down power lines. Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale said federal assistance was being provided. The military was mobilized to deliver aid and help with evacuations, while roads and bridges in the region were closed.
And as Dorian made landfall in the Halifax, roofs have been seen torn off buildings just like this one. Take a look.
Meanwhile, another powerful typhoon that battered Tokyo overnight with record winds killed 2 people, according to police on Monday, as canceled train caused commuter chaos and more than 100 flights canceled, leaving thousands stranded at the airport. Dennis Liu has this report.
Clear skies may have greeted Tokyo's start of the working week after Typhoon Faxai left the capital early this morning. But many have suffered from the typhoon's aftermath. Several commuters packed the train stations as thousands waited for their morning ride to work or school. The East Japan Railway Company reported several train delays and service suspension, likewise with other train operators, particularly in major cities in Tokyo and its neighboring prefectures. Several houses in Chiba Prefecture, east of Tokyo, were damaged, with at least 10 people hospitalized. One woman who suffered serious injuries has been rescued. According to the Tokyo Electric Power Company, almost 1 million households experienced power outage as of 9 in the morning. Evacuation orders has been issued for hundreds of thousands of people in Chiba, in the greater part of Tokyo, and in Shizuoka Prefecture, affecting over 420,000 residents. In Yokohama area, south of Tokyo, several yachts have capsized. Some rivers have overflown, but no injuries have been reported. Over 100 domestic flights have been cancelled at the region's airports. Reporting from Hachioji, Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu for Eagle News International, and I am 1 with 25.
Ling became one of the most powerful typhoons to strike South Korea on Saturday, with the storm killing at least 3 people. The typhoon has winds equivalent to a Category 3 major hurricane in the Atlantic or Eastern Pacific basins as it moves into the Yellow Sea. Our EBC correspondent from South Korea, Kristen Jewel Uy, reports from Seoul.
Strong winds and rains in the country. The typhoon caused 1 death and many injuries as of today. A woman of her 70s was knocked by a strong wind in Boryong, southwest of Seoul. The typhoon Dingling also caused many damages such as uprooted trees, broken signages, and overturned small vehicles. Many international flights and flights to and from Jeju have been cancelled and many sections of roads were blocked, such as bridges going to Incheon Airport due to strong wind. According to the Meteorological Association, the typhoon is expected to continue moving north to reach North Korea later today. EBC correspondent from South Korea, and I am 1 with 25.
In other news, a huge crowd of pro-democracy activists marched to the United States consulate in Hong Kong on Sunday in a bid to ramp up international pressure on Beijing following 3 months of huge and sometimes violent protests. Take a look.
Basically, the Hong Kong government is sort of ignoring us, so there's no point of going that way anymore, which is the government center. What's the point anyway? What's the point of going to the government headquarters? They keep ignoring us anyway. So we just came here. Hopefully, the US will bypass the human rights law, which will punish those government officials who actually follows communist orders and destroying our human rights and freedoms.
We want to send a message to the United States for encouraging them to pass the Act of Freedom and Human Rights. So today we're all here.
The Sunday protest took place despite the chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam's announcement on Wednesday that the extradition bill would be formally withdrawn. Demonstrators continue to call on Hong Kong authorities to meet their other demands, including the release of detained protesters and a probe into allegations of police brutality. The ongoing demonstrations were sparked by the planned extradition bill at the end of March, and since then have evolved into a movement with wider grievances against the Hong Kong administration. The demonstrations have now entered their 14th straight week.
Meanwhile, thousands of pupils from secondary schools across Hong Kong hold hands and form a human chain to show their solidarity towards the pro-democracy protest movement. Hong Kong returned to China in 1997 under a one country, two systems formula that guarantees freedoms not enjoyed on the mainland. Many Hong Kong residents fear Beijing is eroding that autonomy. China has denounced the protests, accusing the U.S. and the United Kingdom of fomenting unrest and warned of the damage to the economy. While some American politicians on both sides of the aisle have expressed support for the democratic goals of the protesters, the Trump administration has maintained a more hands-off approach while it fights a trade war with China. Trump has called for a peaceful resolution to the political crisis and urged China against escalating with a violent crackdown. But he has also said it is up to Beijing to handle the protests. Washington has rejected China's allegations that it is backing the demonstrators. Millions have demonstrated over the last 14 weeks in the biggest challenge to China's rule since the city's handover from Britain in 1997.
Department of Agriculture Secretary William Dar, in a press briefing held at the Bureau of Soils and Water Management, confirmed it was African swine fever that prompted the depopulation of more than 7,000 hogs in Bulacan and Rizal farms last month. He said 14 out of the 20 blood samples from the infected hogs sent to the United Kingdom for laboratory testing turned up positive for ASF. Dar, however, said that the DA was verifying if the ASF strain was similar to that of Vietnam and China. He added the DA had yet to receive reports of more hog deaths up to this time. Dar, along with the Department of Health Secretary Francisco Duque and other DA and DOH officials, hog stakeholders, and members of the private sector earlier had a brutal fight to show the public that it was safe to eat pork. Dar said as long as the hogs pass through the proper process of slaughtering and preparation, the public shouldn't fear eating pork.
Talagang safe na safe itong mga putahe na galing sa pork, mga karneng baboy. At basta dadaan sa tamang proseso, kagaya na kung bagong katayin ay susuriin ng mga veterinaryo kung may sakit yung baboy o wala. Kung may sakit, talagang alisin natin doon. We have to kill it, we have to burn and bury. Okay? Kung walang sakit, ito na yung kakatayin sa slaughterhouse. At itong katatakan ng National Meat Inspection Service.
Before slaughtering, a hog is validated and assessed by a veterinarian who then issues a medical certificate. Once slaughtered, the meats are stamped with a seal from the National Meat Inspection Service, assuring that it passed the food safety measures imposed by the government. ASF is a highly contagious viral disease of domestic and wild pigs that has no cure and no vaccine. Mortality rates are as high as 100%. According to the World Health Organization for Animal Health or World Organization for Animal Health, ASF can be transmitted through direct contact with infected pigs, ingestion of contaminated materials such as food waste, feed or garbage, or contaminated fomites or biological vectors. Historically, there have been no reported outbreaks in Africa and parts of Europe South Africa, and the Caribbean. More recently, the disease has been reported in countries across Africa, Asia, and Europe. Meanwhile, presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo expressed confidence that DA Secretary William Dar is competent enough to handle the problem.
Just like any other sudden foreign disease that affects the swine industry, the DA will undertake all the measures necessary to secure the public for their safety.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTR.
Digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
The CEO of crisis-hit Japanese automaker Nissan plans to resign, reports said Monday, as the firm's board meets to discuss an audit launch after former chief Carlos Ghosn's arrest over financial misconduct. Hiroto Saikawa's reported decision to step down comes days after he admitted receiving overpayments and is the latest blow to the firm after Ghosn's arrest and ouster. Nissan said it had no immediate comment on the reports which first emerged overnight. The timing of Saikawa's resignation, as well as who will succeed him, have reportedly not yet been decided, but the embattled CEO is said to have informed several Nissan executives of his decision. Nissan's board, including executives from the firm's alliance partner Renault, will meet at the company's Yokohama headquarters outside Tokyo from Monday afternoon. The audit was launched in the wake of the Ghosn scandal but appears to have implicated Saikawa and other executives for receiving excess pay as part of a scheme under which directors can earn a bonus if their company's share price rises above a certain level in a set period. Saikawa is suspected of improperly adding 47 million yen or $440,000 to his compensation by altering the terms of a bonus, according to reports. Nissan has not confirmed the details of the payments, but Saikawa apologized last week while denying any wrongdoing. The car maker is currently undergoing an overhaul intended to strengthen governance after the Ghosn scandal.
A law forcing Boris Johnson to try to avoid a no-deal Brexit is coming into force as some MPs consider trying to impeach him. The bill, which led to the sacking of more than 20 Conservative MPs who rebelled against the government, is expected to receive royal assent from the Queen later today. Meanwhile, the British government insisted that Boris Johnson would fight on as Prime Minister despite seeing a top cabinet ally quit and his do-or-die Brexit strategy blocked by Parliament. Giancarlo Matera reports.
Hello, I'm Giancarlo Matera. with a Brexit update after a busy week in the Houses of Parliament. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said last Thursday he would rather be dead in a ditch than delay Brexit beyond next month, as he urged opposition lawmakers who opposed his plan to support an early election. MPs in the House of Commons this week passed a bill that could stop Johnson taking Britain out of the European Union without a divorce deal with Brussels. But they also rejected his call for a snap election to resolve the political deadlock that has characterized the past 3 years since the 2016 referendum vote for Brexit.
We have heard many concerns raised with this bill, but more fundamentally, the issues at play here are not just technical. It is about seriously undermining negotiations that could achieve a deal before the 31st of October, frustrating the referendum result and stopping Brexit.
This bill do now pass. As many of that opinion will say content. The contrary not content, the contents have it.
In a speech in Northern England, Johnson said, "I'd rather be dead in a ditch than ask the EU for a Brexit delay."
Do everything I possibly can to make sure that this country comes out of the EU on October the 31st, but unfortunately Parliament voted yesterday effectively to scupper our negotiating power.
Can you make a promise today to the British public that you will not go back to Brussels and ask for another delay to Brexit?
Yes.
And
I can.
And would you
I'd rather be dead in a ditch.
The Conservative leader said just hours after suffering a fresh blow with the resignation of his brother, MP Joe Johnson, from government. The vote left PM Johnson in limbo, his Brexit plans in tatters, but with no way out after his parliament majority was destroyed by a Conservative Party rebellion over the issue. As a result, his government announced it would try again to force an election with the House of Commons vote on Monday. And he challenged the opposition Labour Party to back it.
I will go to Brussels and I will try to get a deal, and believe me, I know that I can get a deal. But if they, Mr. Speaker, if they won't do a deal, I think it would be eminently sensible for them to do so, and as I say, I believe that they will. Then, under any circumstances, this country will leave the EU on October the 31st. Mr. Speaker, it is completely impossible for government to function if the House of Commons refuses to pass anything that the government proposes. And in my view, and the view of this government, there must now be an election on Tuesday the 15th of October, and I invite the right honourable gentleman to respond, to decide which of us goes as Prime Minister to that crucial council on Thursday the 17th of October. But if I'm still Prime Minister after Tuesday the 15th of October, then we will leave on the 31st of October with, I hope, a much better deal.
Mr. Speaker, we want an election, so we look forward to turfing this government out. The offer of the election today is a bit like the offer of an apple to Snow White and the Wicked Queen, because what he's offering is not an apple or even an election, but the poison of a no deal. So, Mr. Speaker, I repeat what I said last night. Let this bill pass and gain royal assent, then we will back an election so we do not crash out with a no-deal exit from the European Union. And so it's the anti-democratic instincts of this government that cause us concern. Despite the expressed will of the House to support the bill debated today, the Conservative peers, their colleagues in the Lords, have tabled 92 amendments for debate. I really doubt this is motivated by a desire to improve the legislation, not a bit of it, but to filibuster it. An undemocratic cabal in Downing Street, aligned with an undemocratic and unelected House to override the democratic will of this House expressed in the bill that we have just given a third reading to. If they can't win the argument, they try to shut down debate.
Boris expressed regret about his brother Joe's resignation as a junior university minister a few hours earlier, which only reinforced the sense of a government in crisis. Joe Johnson had strongly opposed Brexit.
Joe doesn't agree with me about the European Union because it's an issue that obviously divides families and divides everybody. But I think what Joe would agree is that we need to get on and sort this thing out. And I think what Joe certainly would agree, and I think he said as much this afternoon, is that this government has exactly the right priorities when it comes to dealing with the issues that really matter to the British people.
Joe Johnson announced that he would stand at the next election as the MP, another loss to the government Conservative Party, which this week lost its parliamentary majority. The Premier expelled 21 Tory MPs for rebelling over this Brexit plan, while another one dramatically defected to the pro-European Liberal Democrats.
To coin a phrase, the Commons has acted to stop a no-deal Brexit by any means necessary.
And that is what this bill is about. It's not about whether we leave, but about the method of our going. Whether we depart as friends, neighbours, allies, with agreement between us, and in a way that best supports our economy, security and the people across the continent. It matters for them.
The legislation against a no-deal Brexit must still pass the House of Lords, but Johnson has accepted that it almost certainly will become law. It would force Boris to ask the EU to delay Brexit to January 31, 2020, should an EU summit in Brussels on October 17 fail to produce a deal, or if MPs fail to endorse the no deal. The British pound surged to a one-month high against the dollar on rising market hopes that Britain can avoid a disorderly end to 46 years of EU membership next month. Johnson insists he wants a divorce deal with the EU, but says the terms agreed by his predecessor Theresa May are unacceptable.
President Juncker listened to what Prime Minister Johnson had to say and reiterated the EU's position that the withdrawal agreement is the best and only agreement possible in line with the European Council guidelines.
The EU has refused to reopen text while also complaining that Boris has yet to come up with any new ideas. Like the Johnsons, the British Prime Minister and Parliament and the public are also divided over Brexit, and the Prime Minister's scepticism about a deal is shared by some across the Channel.
You know, the basis of our parliamentary democracy is that we vote for MPs and then they advocate and they legislate, and to, at the time of national emergency, to say that we don't need our MPs working for us, talking for us in Parliament, it just seems crazy and it seems really wrong.
Shutting down Parliament is something that should never happen. We're supposed to be a democracy, not a dictatorship.
Another thing, if we now stay in the EU, they'll never let this happen again. And I think there's going to be a big penalty to pay. So I think we now have to get out of the EU.
If we pass this bill, it doesn't go into law until such time as it gets the Queen's assent. And constitutionally, the government can refuse to pass it to the Queen for assent. So if that happens, we will leave on the 31st of October, come what may. That's what I'm hoping will happen.
Reporting from London, I'm Giancarlo Matera from EBC UK, and I'm 1 with 25.
Meanwhile, British Airways on Monday cancelled almost all flights departing and arriving into the UK as the airline's first ever pilot strike began, sparking travel chaos for tens of thousands of passengers. The industrial action over pay on Monday and Tuesday by members of the British Airline Pilots Association, BALPA, trade union follows around 9 months of failed talks. The carrier, owned by London-listed International Airlines Group and which operates about 850 flights per day in Britain, said it had no option but to cancel nearly all scheduled flights. BA and its 4,300 pilots have been locked in a long-running pay dispute that could disrupt the travel plans of nearly 300,000 people in total over 2 days. Pilots are also threatening to strike for one more day on September 27 and then possibly again closer to the winter holidays should the dispute drag on. BALPA has rejected a pay of increase of 11.5% over 3 years that airline proposed in July. BA says the offer would see flight captains receive world-class pay and benefits of around £200,000 a year. The airline pointed out also that 2 other unions representing 90% of the airline's workers have accepted the 11.5% raise. BALPA counters that a co-pilot's salaries average around £70,000 and that of junior ones drops down to just a measly £26,000. This leaves some in heavy debt since they must first undergo training that the BBC estimate cost around £100,000.
Okay, we're still following the updates on Brexit. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson met his Irish counterpart in Dublin on Monday as he battled to salvage his hardline Brexit strategy and force an early election in the face of fierce opposition in Westminster. Take a look. Johnson held talks with Leo Varadkar amid an apparent stalemate in the Brexit process and as MPs look set to vote down his second bid for a snap poll next month. The British leader has vowed to take Britain out of the EU by October 31st with or without a formal divorce deal, despite warnings that the latter scenario would entail economic chaos. He wants the bloc to scrap a special provision in the deal agreed by his predecessor, Theresa May, to keep the Northern Irish border open in all circumstances after Brexit, arguing alternative arrangements exist.
Can we protect the economic unity?
We must protect the peace and also the burgeoning all-island economy. And that's why for us the backstop continues to be a critical component of the withdrawal agreement unless and until alternatives are found. But we are open to alternatives, but they must be realistic ones, legally binding and workable, and we haven't received such proposals to date.
Which I congratulate the
backstop is a provision in the withdrawal agreement Johnson's predecessor Theresa May struck with Brussels to keep the Irish border open regardless of the outcome of Britain's future relationship with the EU. It would keep the country in the bloc's customs union until a long-term solution to trade terms is agreed. Prime Minister Johnson reiterated his stance that the provision must be scrapped in order for the two sides to reach a compromise deal ahead of Britain's October 31st departure date. He struck an optimistic tone on the prospects of finding a deal on the contention issue.
That I want to find a deal. I want to get a deal. Like you, I've looked carefully at no deal. I've assessed its consequences both for our country and yours. And yes, of course, we could do it. The UK could certainly get through it. But be in no doubt that outcome would be a failure of statecraft for which we would all be responsible, and in circumstances that are far tougher than now. And the results for both the
Investing in land restoration could not only help keep our planet healthy, but also be the starting point for resolving some of the biggest issues of our time. The head of the UN entity tackling desertification told journalists on Friday via video conference from the ongoing global summit on the issue underway in India's capital.
Land is providing us with 99.7% of the food we eat. So almost all the calories we eat are coming from land. It is also providing us with the water we drink. The quality of the water we get is coming from land and from its ecosystems. It's a major contributor to our economies, and land degradation, which is the phenomenon that we are dealing with, is actually generating huge loss to the world economy. The loss is estimated between 10 and 17% of the global GDP. Land degradation is also a phenomenon that has connections with peace and security. I'm sure you know that the situation, in particular in the Sahel, is a mix of many factors, including competition over access to land and water, which is triggering conflict between farmers and pastoralists, as is the case in Nigeria, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and in other parts of the Sahel. Land degradation is a phenomenon that has been known for many years. Now, the point is, how can we address this issue? And the good news is that the technology, the science, and the knowledge is there to actually reduce land degradation and fix this phenomenon once for all.
The theme of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification is investing in land, unlocking opportunities. Reversing land degradation and its outcomes while accelerating positive achievements for people and for ecosystems with a view to deliver on sustainable development goals is the core agenda of the 14th session of COP14.
Labor Day in the United States is observed on the first Monday of September, but the island territory of American Samoa has taken this federal holiday to another level by publicly recognizing government workers and even private business employees. EBC American Samoa correspondent Arian Torres-Suan has the details on this unique event.
Workforce Day is the gathering of all ASG employees. It's a day where all the employees get together to celebrate Workforce Day, including us, the employee of the Department of Education.
Upon taking the office in 2013, Governor Lolo Molinga established Workforce Day throughout the territory in order to recognize and honor American Samoa's workforce in both the private and public sectors. This year's celebration was held at the Whangatongo Malay, located east of the capital city of Intangopango. This is the first time the territorial government used this facility instead of Veterans Memorial Stadium, which served as the venue for the past 5 years. The formal portion of the event began with the raising of the flags of the United States and then American Samoa. The ceremony later concluded with a parade of workers from all over the territory. Meanwhile, some workers who took part in the parade shared their views about living and working in this part of the South Pacific.
Increase the pay. The more money they put in, sure that the people are going to work harder. Life's going to be easier. Nowadays, it's very, very expensive, like in the stateside. Better communications with the local people. What they need to hear from us.
As far as the workforce, of course we have a variety of employers here. Our biggest employer here is the Starkey's Cannery, but also the government. So if you are a teacher and you would like to teach here in American Samoa, first and foremost, I would encourage you to get your degree equivalency certification, which is through the Educational Credential Educational Credential Evaluation Agency in Wisconsin. You just have to pay a fee and they will validate or certify that your degree is equivalent to a U.S. degree. That's one thing if you're a foreigner trying to come and teach over here. And also bring your certificates and your diplomas and your work experience. You will need specifically a work permit, of course, so you need to be sponsored by an American Samoan, or if the government will hire you as a teacher, then you will be sponsored by the government. But those are the basic things that you will need to provide in order for you to apply to become a teacher here in American Samoa.
Later that same day, the governor hosted dedication ceremonies for 2 projects: the newly renovated Fangatongo Pavilion and the new 2-story Hayden Museum. Reporting from Pango Pango in American Samoa, I am Arian Torres Suwan for Eagle News, and I am 1 with 25.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
I am here at Gastown, which is a National Historic Site in Vancouver, British Columbia. Located in Vancouver's oldest neighborhood is the steam-powered clock, which is Gastown's most famous landmark. Make sure to tune in to Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I am Lou Aquino, EBC correspondent, and I am 1 with 25.
Letters and Music, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 1:00 hanggang 2:00 ng hapon.
Delivering one of his most dramatic major final performances, Rafael Nadal captured his 19th career Grand Slam title Sunday by winning his 4th U.S. Open, outlasting Russia's Daniil Medvedev 7-5, 6-3, 5-7, 4-6, 6-4. The 33-year-old Spanish left-hander moved one shy of Roger Federer's all-time men's record 20 Grand Slam triumphs and became the second oldest New York champion in the Open era after Ken Rosewall in 1970 at age 35. It took a supreme effort from the Spanish maestro, who nearly became the first player to drop the final after leading by 2 sets since Ted Schroeder in 1949 before winning a near 5-hour thriller. World number 2 Nadal took the top prize of $3.85 million at Arthur Ashe Stadium and added to his U.S. Open trophy haul from 2010, 2013, and 2017. Nadal, who was in his 5th U.S. Open championship match and 27th Grand Slam final, is the first man to claim 5 major titles after turning 30. At 4 hours and 50 minutes, the match finished 4 minutes short of equaling the longest final in U.S. Open history from Mats Willander's 1988 win and Andy Murray's 2012 title. It was the second Slam title of the year for Nadal after taking his 12th French Open crown in June. In addition to reaching the brink of Federer's mark, Nadal moved one shy of the Open era record 5 U.S. Open titles won by Federer, Jimmy Connors, and Pete Sampras.
And finally in our news, the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. shows works of up-and-coming artist Elmer Calata. Calata has caught the eye of not only of the Filipino community but also in the international scene. Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmot files this report.
Crisp and refreshing, created from memories distant and recent, rich with longing to revisit what was once home. That's a Calata piece. Be it molded from clay, dashed with ink, or splashed with paint, it evokes emotions and draws one in with a familiar pleasantness. Thus, what makes an Elmer or a Calata piece?
I think it's it's all about the details, right? And it's the subject of the pieces. The pieces usually happens is, because I wake up every morning and something reminds you of a moment in your life or an interaction with, somebody else, or like how I feel during the time period. It may come from that or from memory. I think during the process of all these pieces, it's really just what inspires me every time I wake up, and then it gives me something to do every day, and it just makes me happy. So yeah.
Elmer, you sculpt, you draw, you paint. What is your favorite medium?
A lot of favorite aspect on each medium. With painting, I think it's just very peaceful. I find it's really. All of them are meditative because of the details that I put in and the time and the patience that I put in. But with drawing, there's just something that you just get lost in it. And then with the ceramics, every time I feel bad, it always tends to take out the bad emotions or the bad feelings, and it makes you just feel better.
You first started your exhibit at home, and then you went to restaurants, and now you're at the Philippine Embassy. How does that make you feel?
Having been based in DC, having had pieces in Embassy, in Paraguayan Embassy, with the Peace Corps, in restaurants, because I came from the restaurant industry as well, being recognized. And I've even had, done interviews with you guys, and music videos in Paraguay, and permanent, pieces in, locations in Paraguay. It's just an honor, and I'm just really, it's really surprising, and I'm just I gotta keep doing this, so the whole idea is to inspire people, and if I'm doing that, then I'll have to keep doing this, and it makes me happy.
You are in DC, the nation's capital, a hub of art museums. How do you feel having your work speak here in Washington, D.C.?
D.C. is an important place for a lot of people. A lot of people who lives here, makes the decision not only for the city, not only for the country, but for all over the world. For the international development or international community, as with my past, I felt that it's important to inspire those people so that your impact is not just in your immediate community, but also affects other communities in the world. And communities such as my own in the Philippines, in South America, in Europe, in Central America. So yeah, I just figured it's the best place to be in terms of being an artist. And it's not easy anywhere, but you got to start somewhere, and I think DC is a great place for it. So being a Filipino and being in having a show in the Philippine Embassy. From all the worlds that I've been, ultimately, it's still the Filipino in me that represents my work and the details, because all of this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the upbringing that I had when I was growing up in the Philippines. So yeah.
Well, we are open to all forms of art. So it could be visual arts, it could be a performing arts. So if it has a Filipino connection, especially if it promotes Filipino culture and heritage, then of course that is given priority. And Elmer Calata, the artist that we're featuring tonight and for the rest of September, is the second artist, Filipino-American artist. The first was Adrian Mendoza, also based here in the area. And we would just like to showcase the talent of the Filipinos and the Filipino-American. We want to give them a platform. We want to help them get the exposure that they need here in Washington, D.C. And, through our reach also and the Central Rizal Network, we want to be able to spread information about them just so that more people know that we have these artists here. Or at the same time, we want to give them a feeling of home, and welcome. That you always have a warm reception here at the Philippine Embassy. On September 17, we'll have a financial literacy seminar featuring Mon Abrea, or also called the Tax Whiz. So he knows everything about Philippine taxes, how to navigate the tax system in the Philippines. So he'll be here. Also, on September 20th, we will show the film documentary Legacy of Jose Abad Santos. The producer, Desiree Benipayo, and her husband, who is a descendant of Jose Abad Santos, and an actor, Ricardo Cepeda, who plays Jose Abad Santos in the film. They will both be here for a talkback event after the screen. So that's going to be on September 20. On September 26, in conjunction conjunction with the Philippine-American Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Washington, D.C., we will have a Phil-Am-Men in Business, a panel discussion.
The Elmer Calada exhibit In Due Time is on display and available to view from September 6th to the 27th of this year, Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. here at the Philippine Chancery Annex Building in Washington, D.C. For Eagle News, I am Eliza Gonzalez, Manglik Mont, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Eliza.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also, check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Don Orozco. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Alma Angeles, and we're one with 25.